Guido Lures is on the Beyond Jaws podcast today. We're going to be talking about his journey all the way up to being a postdoc and talking about not only just focusing in on one shark, but on many sharks and the fascination that we have with visual pictures and being able to connect to visual pictures of these animals and understanding the science behind it. We're going to be talking about that on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. Enjoy the episode. Let's start the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. I'm your co-host, Andrew Lewin, with my co-host, Dr. David Ebert. Dave, that was a hard intro for me to do. I did it probably about 17 times, kept messing up Guido's name as well as the podcast that we were on. I'm struggling. Why don't you tell us how excited you are to have Guido on the podcast? Again, this is the second time being on the podcast.
Yeah, no, we're really excited to have Guido. Was on a few years ago. We had the Global Wedgefish and Guitarfish Symposium back in November, December of 2021, and definitely check out those episodes. But we wanted to have him back for a more thorough and in-depth discussion on his research. And Guido, when he was on before, he was a PhD student, still working on his thesis, but now he's officially Dr. Guido Leurs. And so really excited to have him back on to come on. And he's an amazing guy, and he has a ton of stuff going on. He's from the Netherlands. And so it's not really a place you often think about a lot of shark researchers coming out of. But he did a lot of the typical things. He went to South Africa. He worked in Bimini in the Bahamas. And he just had this passion for studying sharks. And he's worked in some fascinating areas in Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania. And as we talked today, some of his journey, some of the fascinating species he worked on, including the Mauritanian wedgefish, which we'll touch on as well during the interview. And so anyways, he has a fascinating journey in his story, and he did a phenomenal PhD thesis we'll talk about as well. So really hope you enjoy the show today, and hopefully by the end of the show, Andrew will be able to pronounce his name correctly.
I may or may not. I'm not going to. I'm not sure if I want to try. We'll see how that goes today. Okay. A little tired, but that's okay. This is going to be a great episode. I can't wait for you guys to listen to the interview. So here's the interview with Guido. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you after. Hey, Guido, welcome back to the Beyond Jaws podcast. Are you ready to talk about the conservation of sharks and rays?
Hello. Yeah, I'm always ready to talk about sharks. Yeah, definitely.
Love it.
Well, that's great to hear. Well, today on our Beyond Jaws podcast, we have a rising star in the field with the awesome Dr. Guido Leurs today. And Guido's a postdoctoral researcher, and I'm going to mispronounce this, at Wageningen University. I apologize for my Dutch, but it's in the Netherlands, and he specializes in ecology and conservation of sharks and rays. His work explores the ecological roles of elasmobranchs across a variety of ecosystems, including large intertidal zones, coral reefs, and temperate coastal waters from different levels of fishing pressure. He has a strong focus on the intersection between ecological research and shark fisheries, particularly in regions where shark conservation action is urgently needed. Guido leads and contributes to multiple international projects, including in Guinea-Bissau in West Africa, in the Dutch Caribbean, and in the North Sea. And wow, those are like three pretty widely geographic areas where I hope to hear more about. He's a member of the IUCN Shark Specialist Group and has contributed to the important Sharks and Rays areas programs. In addition, Guido organizes the annual Azores Shark and Ray Safari that teaches divers about sharks and rays, and where he gives lectures about shark ecology, also at universities. He has over 10 research publications. He also is a frequent contributor to the Red List assessment, and he's also a frequent presenter at conferences, including the American Elasmobranch Society Symposium on Wedgefish and Guitarfish, which he was actually on episode 9 back on November 15th in 2021. So check that out if you haven't yet. His current position is, as I say, he's a postdoctoral researcher at, I won't try to mess up his university name again. And he does have a Bachelor of Science at Den Bosch University of Applied Sciences, and a Master's of Science from the same university I won't mispronounce, and his PhD as well from another university that I will not mispronounce again either. Anyway, sorry, but Guido's a fantastic guy. My Dutch is not very good. So anyway, but Guido, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry about the Dutch name.
Oh, don't be sorry. It's all right. We need to figure this out.
I have no excuse, having lived in South Africa, where I was exposed to Afrikaans and Dutch quite a bit. I should have a much better grasp of the language, but I don't. So I apologize. So anyway, we're really excited to have you here. And kind of the first question I want to get started with is, how'd you get interested in the marine sciences and into shark research?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Great to be back on the show. Um, yeah, all started, I think, with my dad watching specific movies that everybody knows about, Jaws, Deep Blue Sea, and basically seeing them along the sidelines, or like sitting with him, seeing some of the scenes, and yeah, that all looked fascinating. I think I could tell back then already that Jaws was kind of fake. Um, I guess the how do you say that, the special effects weren't that great.
Right.
I think at the time that they came out, they were probably amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, now
Yeah.
not that much anymore. But yeah,
Yeah.
and from that, I started reading up about sharks myself. Saw documentaries like Shark Water from an early age,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for me that was the film that showed sharks in a completely different way. Loved seeing Steve Irwin on TV also.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all where it started.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So when you got, you grew up there and you decided to go to like decide on universities and where in schooling,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much focused on those areas that would try to take you in that direction.
Yeah, so that's yeah, it's kind of tricky because the Netherlands is not really known for its sharks. I also grew up 200 kilometers from the sea, which is, I guess, in the US that's not that much, but that's basically our entire country. So, um, so yeah, it was mostly books, movies. Started reading a bit more scientific books also. Um,
Mhm.
uh, at quite a young age, and then decided to go into applied biology. And I remember really well, like one of the first days into that study, one of the teachers asked, like, "Okay, so why did you decide to study biology?" I was like, I wanna work with sharks." And she was like, "Yeah, we'll see about that." She was like, "Yeah, that's probably going to change in
Good
the four
luck.
years and blah blah blah."
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
yeah, that never changed.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're going to at the different universities, do they go because you stayed in the Netherlands? I know some people have gone to like Australia and other places, but you stayed in the Netherlands. Was
Yeah.
it did they the programs you went to? They had good biology programs or ecology programs?
Yeah, and I think I wasn't, in that sense, I wasn't ready to leave the Netherlands also.
Hmm.
I mean, I like the Netherlands. It doesn't have a lot of sharks, but it's a great country.
Yeah.
But it's also like the applied biology bachelor that I did forced us to like a fixed a program was that you had to go abroad for 6 months at least, and that could be Belgium or Germany, but it could also be in my case South Africa, and I did a little project in the Bahamas as well. So I really like, yeah, I stayed in the Netherlands for almost all my studies, but whenever I could go abroad and do a project abroad, I took that chance.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And went to South Africa. I guess it was white sharks you were looking at
yeah,
when you were
yeah,
volunteer. Yeah, of course.
yeah.
What
I
else
think,
would you do?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a great experience. Though. It was 7 months in Gansbaai,
Hmm.
and yeah, worked on one of the cage diving boats. I think that nowadays, I'm not sure if they're still operating, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great experience. I learned a lot, saw a lot of sharks,
Hmm.
and it's a beautiful country.
Oh yeah, no, you have to convince me. That's for sure. So you went there, and then you went to when you went to the Bahamas. Was Sonny Gruber still there when you went to the Bahamas? Or
Um, I don't think he was. He wasn't there at the moment because we definitely went to the. I didn't go to the shark lab. We had our we worked with the great hammerhead sharks.
oh, okay,
Worked with Craig O'Connell.
okay,
We had a
hmm,
smaller our own expedition basically, but we did go to the shark lab, and he wasn't there at the time, no,
okay,
unfortunately.
okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know if you had a
Uh,
chance to cross paths. So you
yeah.
went. So you did these volunteer projects in South Africa and the Bahamas. Then obviously that did not diminish your enthusiasm for sharks,
No.
and so you came back. So when you came back to and this was all I presume this is before you started your graduate studies.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It was all like, yeah, these projects really motivated me. I got the freedom also to publish, so that was very nice
Nice.
at relatively
Hmm.
early in my career.
Hmm.
Good support from from supervisors. So that was very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you came back, okay, so you came back, you started pursuing. How did you? And you're obviously working. I know. I think you got some very diverse projects in different areas and stuff. So, and was it the? How did you wind up in Guinea-Bissau, which is not some place that's on the beaten path, let's say?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
how
that's a
did you?
good question. Um, yeah, that's a bit of a long story, so I'll try to keep it a bit short. But
That's what the
uh,
podcast is for. You can keep it as long as you'd like.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
we want the juicy stories too. So,
So it's actually the project was a bird focused project. So it was completely focused on shorebirds, and the funding also came from like shorebird related work. But it basically it started like at my university at the time. One of the professors knew I was interested in sharks. He went to Mauritania, a bit more north in West
Mhm.
Africa, to work on large intertidal areas and mostly focusing on the shorebirds, migratory shorebirds that migrate from the Netherlands, a big intertidal area in the Netherlands that migrate every winter to West Africa, spend the winter there. Um, and they basically they use these intertidal areas for feeding, for fueling up to make those long migrations back to the Netherlands. And what they saw there during their expeditions was every year they went there, they saw a bigger and bigger shark fishery.
Hmm.
So they saw that local communities were catching more and more sharks. And we're talking about they've been working in those areas for the past decades. Um, and at some point he heard like there was somebody interested in sharks. Maybe let's take him on one of our expeditions. So I joined him to the Bangladesh in Mauritania,
Mhm.
and I looked at the shark fishery there, and we got this idea of like, so what if sharks in these large intertidal areas might be feeding on the same resources in these areas than the birds? These large intertidal areas, they fall dry every 6 hours or every 4 hours. These big sand flats, they fall dry. That's when the birds eat crustaceans, worms, shellfish. But then 6 hours later, those sharks and rays might have access to those same prey species. And so this whole hypothesis, we thought out this whole hypothesis of shark fisheries indirectly through the food web having an impact on those migratory waders that we're trying to protect in the Netherlands. And that's all like long story short, that's how we got into um, a project in the Bangladesh in Mauritania, but also in the Bijikos archipelago, which is another large intertidal area in Guinea-Bissau. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. So, so you went to both Mauritania and Guinea-Bissau?
Yeah. So Mauritania was mostly during my master's actually. We did most of the field work already during my master's, and then in Guinea-Bissau that was mostly during the PhD. So every year of the PhD we did two expeditions there.
And were
Nice.
you? Was there any specific? Were you just trying to basically document what you were seeing? Was that a part of it?
Yeah. So I think when we first went to the Bijikos archipelago, of course, we started working with the National Fisheries Institute. We looked at what have you been collecting, what they've been collecting on sharks, and we saw that there was almost no species specific information. So that was basically the first part. We came in with these big ecological questions, and of course, we saw that we needed to take a couple of steps back. So yeah, we did a study using eDNA, so sort of to try to quickly come up with a species list, but also looking at the fisheries. We started with the National Fisheries Institute. We started an observer program, so landing site surveys. Um, and of course, yeah, for the food web related questions, we started catching animals and taking samples from animals that were captured in the fisheries, and then doing stabilized dope analysis. But yeah, so it was very diverse.
Mhm. So I guess obviously one of the big critically endangered groups there is the wedgefish and guitar fish, and
Yeah,
there's a unique species there. If people that not listening in may or may not be aware of, it's called a false shark ray, and it's
yeah,
a genus that was just described in 2016. Rinca Rhina Mauritaniensis. I'm trying to remember. I know
yeah,
it's Rinco
yeah.
something. I can, but Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, I've never seen it, obviously. Um, I wish.
Yeah.
But I think that there's only a couple of photos of the species. I've heard of people like, of course, we asked um, fisheries observers there in the Bangladesh, because the species is only known from the Bangladesh, also not even outside
Mm-hmm.
that specific intertidal area in Mauritania. Um, yeah, we asked the fisheries observers, and some of them said they've seen it. Um, I'm wondering like how accurate that is, but I definitely one of the fisheries observers could tell me that he saw it, and I think he also provided one of the pictures that made it
Into
into
the
the publication.
post.
Um, but yeah, I've never seen it. We never picked it up with our eDNA in any other area.
Mm.
But yeah.
Did you see any of the other guitar fish? 'Cause isn't one of the wedge fish there,
Yeah.
Liberty, occur in that area?
Yeah, it's Liberty is African wedgefish. Yeah,
Okay.
we so we when we had the fisheries observer program running in the Bijikos archipelago in Guinea-Bissau, that is, we had at some point we had three local students that worked on our project. One of them did the landing site service, and two of them did interviews with the fishing community, trying to reconstruct um, like very roughly population trends based on their experiences over the past decades. And while they were doing one of the interviews, one of the fishermen said, like, "Oh, I captured this casapai. And casapai is the local name for guitarfish."
Mhm.
And he said casapai pintado, which means like a guitarfish with speckles, like with dots. And luckily, everybody has phones nowadays. So he made a couple of pictures and he showed it to us, and the students send it to me. And I think it was just before Christmas, and I got this nice surprise on WhatsApp. Um, and unfortunately, it was too late for us to take samples. But yeah, we were able to confirm that it was African wedgefish, and I think the previous record of that species in the Bijikos was from 2006. So that was quite a nice record. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Since then, you still go back there now pretty regularly to Guinea-Bissau, is it?
Yeah, yeah. So I did my PhD mostly focused on the food webs of these large
And
areas. Yeah,
if I can
yeah.
just give a plug, this is his thesis, and
Yeah,
thank
that's
you
a
very
lot of.
much for sending me a copy. This was just an amazing PhD
That's a thesis book. I've never seen one
It's
that
like
detailed before, and that looks like a textbook you could sell to people.
I actually had people ask me if they can buy one, but of course I'm not allowed because it's university property. But
Right,
yeah,
right.
it was I just had to shout out it's a very impressive thesis you did
thank you,
on
thank
that
you.
area there. It's super impressive. So and again,
But for
thanks.
that,
Yeah.
for the layout, like what made you
Oh,
decide to do that type of layout? Like that, like I said, like usually with this thesis, like my master's thesis, was
Yeah,
the traditional, you just get it bound by what the university kind of gives you. There was no illustrated photos. There was like, it was all, black and white and so forth. I guess
yeah.
what made you decide to do this? Was that something with the university that did that? Is just something special with the university, or you decided to make it? You know what? I work so hard on this. I want to make sure that people get use out of
Well,
this.
it's a bit of it's quite common actually in the Netherlands
Yeah,
that you design your thesis and that it's also still printed as a book.
I love that.
Um, yeah, so it's really nice. But I mean, I always say I can spend days designing a graph for a paper or something. So I
True.
really like visualizing stuff.
Awesome.
So then, yeah, of course, I also want my thesis to look a certain way, but I had help from a designer, so that was really
That's
nice.
That's awesome because you don't see that often. Like, well, I don't see that often. And you write your thesis and then you kind of set it aside, and you
Yeah,
use it. Yeah, look at the
look at the back
yeah,
of that.
pictures. That's
yeah.
unreal.
And
That's the
and
back of the
that's really
book.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
that's
really
the
cool because the drawings on the back, they were made by one of the master students that did his project with me, and then the drawings on the cover is another master student.
Love it.
yeah.
So it was really, yeah, really nice.
Yeah, for those who are
Oh,
listening to the audio version of this, I highly recommend that you go to our YouTube channel, check it out because it's a really cool. And, oh, look at the
Uh,
photos. That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's a
that's
beautiful.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
that's
think
the
this is important if you want people to know what your thesis is about, right? If you just
yeah,
put it up
yeah,
in the school library or whatever in the university library, people may not pick it up just to see it. People are visual. A lot of people are visual learners. They want to see the pictures. They want to see the effort put in. I really, really like this. This has got me all jazzed up. I
Oh
really like
yeah,
the way you
this
do it.
is.
Did the university
that's
pay for it? Or did you have to go over and pay for it yourself?
well, it was a bit bigger than normally, so in that sense, no, but like we got some project funding also for it, and the university pays it.
Awesome.
So yeah, so that's really
Yeah.
really nice, and I also think like it's really important because of course we work on species that often sell themselves also, but of course they're so fascinating, and um, yeah, if you can show that in such a way, I really like to do that. And I also try it in lectures or presentations I give, is like make it very visual, and
Mhm.
not too much text.
Yeah.
Although there's a lot of text in this book also.
Well, just so people know, there's like 11 chapters, which I gather it's gonna be probably about 11 papers out of that, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
all they're just. I mean, yeah, I just started going through it. And I thought I first got it last year, and I just about pretty much gone through the whole thing like front to back was freaking amazing.
well,
So
it's good to hear that at least somebody is reading it also.
yeah, I
Um,
just it was so nice when I got it. I was like going, what? Hey, well, thanks for sending me a copy, but it was just like I just read through it. I go like, wow, this is like freaking amazing. So,
thank you,
um,
thank you.
but anyway,
Yeah.
so hopefully now you just get I don't know if how many of those papers you've published so far, but you
I
know,
mean, yeah. So the first, yeah, to get back to the 11 chapters, the first one is the introduction, and the last one is like a synthesis kind of chapter. So you
yeah,
normally don't publish those, but I
right.
think yeah, there's one I'm waiting for the proof, and then there is one more that I need to submit.
Mhm.
So and then
Yeah.
they're all published.
That was pretty. Like I said, it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. Not knocking other people finishing their thesis, but it was pretty awesome the way the whole thing looked. So
Thank you,
but
thank
now
you.
and you just finished like last June, was it? About almost what about
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
a year,
almost a
about a
year
year ago.
ago.
Yeah, almost a
Yeah,
year ago. Even
yeah.
though this episode will probably end up airing in June, so it'll be about the 1 year anniversary for your thing.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
we're yeah.
it's scary to think that it's already 1 year ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
But yeah.
do I won't tell you how many years it's been since I finished
I was just
mine,
about to
but
ask.
it's been a while. So
Hey, it's been
yeah,
over
well,
20 years for my masters, so
yeah, I know.
Okay. Yeah.
It's funny how that sneaks up on you. All of a
oh
sudden,
yeah.
it's like, oh, it's been a year, and then suddenly it's been 20 years, and then it's been like, a lot longer than that. So,
Okay. So I should be happy. It's just 1 year.
oh yeah,
Yes,
no, be
yeah, you're
happy.
still
Be
fresh,
Okay.
Yeah,
fresh.
it's still fresh and get it and just get some of this stuff out. So you finished that, and it was all based on your Africa work, but
Yeah.
you're also doing some work in like the Dutch Caribbean. Like where you exactly you working there?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So now after my PhD, so I'm also still working in Guinea-Bissau actually as part of a postdoc. But I'm actually started doing that in my master's already.
mhm.
I'm involved in more like a movement ecology project
Okay.
in the Dutch Caribbean, islands of Saba, St. Eustatius, and St. Martin in between.
Oh, neat.
Um, so yeah, we basically have a big data set on um, acoustic telemetry of Caribbean reef sharks,
Oh, wow.
silky sharks, nurse sharks, some tiger sharks. Um, yeah, and that's a data set I think spans back almost 10 years now. So
Mhm.
see, and that's also confronting for me because that means 10 years ago, I think I did my project. So that is yeah, the start of my master's.
Yeah. So you see how it sneaks up on you. You went from 1 year for your PhD to 10 years. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's quite.
yeah, it won't get
I
any
wasn't
better.
ready for that.
Yeah. So yeah, it sneaks up on you pretty quickly. And you're still
Yeah.
actively working on some of those projects now. You said
Yeah,
some.
yeah. So we have funding to continue that project. So we're I think this November we'll go there. Focus on some different shark species. We have a big data set on Caribbean reef sharks.
Okay.
Um, uh, I think in total, I wouldn't say like over 50 individuals with transmitters. So I think we have enough of those. So I think we're going to focus more on tagging nurse sharks and tiger sharks also.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I look forward to that. We do some trophic ecology there as well. So really trying to explain niche overlap using the telemetry, but also looking at stable isotopes between.
Mm.
Specifically, I was actually doing the analysis just now, juvenile silky sharks and juvenile Caribbean reef sharks. So that's quite a interesting
Are you
study.
doing
Yeah.
Are you doing much diving on that project? You get in the
Um,
water.
Not really, to be honest, because well, I wasn't working on this project during my PhD. I was involved with the data analysis. Hopefully, next time we go there, there will be some diving. But Dutch law is a bit complicated when it comes to diving for your job. You need to have a lot of training and
Hmm.
insurance, and so
Okay.
that's a bit of a hurdle that we have
Oh,
to take first.
yeah. Well, and then the other project is a newer project you mentioned is in the North Sea, the
Yeah,
Dutch.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay,
That's yeah.
what are you doing there?
Yeah, it's a bit of a diversity in projects, if we talk about it like this. But so that's actually a project that still has to start. But
Hmm.
over the next 3 years, we'll be looking at also acoustic telemetry of quite a range of species. So we have taupe, smoothhound, small spotted cat shark, but also some skate species,
Hmm.
common stingray. So it's a combination of acoustic telemetry. I do that with two good colleagues of mine who focus more on that part, and I will be more looking at the food web role and stable isotopes, diet of the species. And it's a really integrated project to see how can movement ecology of the species also explain their diet, for instance.
Well, it seemed like 'cause, I did a little this. I did actually did a lot of this when I was young, like yourself, starting out, like working in these sort of temperate, cool water,
Yeah,
tropical, temperate. It's kind. I always found kind of fascinating, just sort of trying to look at the ecological role of different species in these different systems. And so,
yeah,
even though some of the tropical ones are probably more diverse, you probably find the same sort of species or different species, but fill in similar roles or niches, but just in a
yeah.
very different thing.
Yeah, we see that. Like, for instance, if I compare Guinea-Bissau, like that's the whole reason that we first went to the Pichinchos archipelago. It's that it resembles a tropical version of our Wadden Sea, a
Mm.
coastal area that we have in the Netherlands. Um, but of course, species richness-wise or species composition-wise, it's completely different. It has much more sharks than shark species than what we have in the Netherlands, and much bigger also. Completely different food availability also, but also very similar in a way.
Mhm. Well, even like the rays, you'd have skates are probably more common, pretty much
Yeah,
the common species there, and you don't probably have as much. I don't even know if you even have any like guitar fish or anything up in that
no,
part
no,
at all.
no.
So
We have Dasiatus pastinaca, so
okay,
common stingray, but that's for the rest they're all skates. Yeah.
for all skate, yeah, and down in Guinea-Bissau, you probably don't have any skates you're dealing with at all. I'm guessing.
No, I've seen one skate species, and now I don't remember the species name, but in one of the fisheries databases from the Bang again, so Mauritania.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
but it's yeah, in Guinea-Bissau, I've never seen a skate. No,
Yeah, yeah, they probably.
no.
I'm sure most of them are offshore, deeper
Yeah,
water.
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, well, that's kind of cool. So you're doing. I was reading some of the stuff you're doing. Like what type of stuff you doing with hammerhead sharks? Is that more in the back in the Caribbean again, or
No,
what's your?
that's more in West Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually I just came back. What is it? 2, 3 weeks ago from Guinea-Bissau.
Hmm.
We set out to find black-trimmed guitarfish and scalloped hammerheads, um, to put pop-up archival tags on them.
Hmm.
We couldn't find the hammerheads, unfortunately, but
Hmm.
we did before, but they were too small to be tagged. We did find a lot of black-trimmed guitarfish, so that's good. We
Hmm.
got all our transmitters out. But it's quite interesting. The hammerheads, I have quite a batch of fin clips
Hmm.
of all the sharks and rays that I work on. But we had some students look at them, the fin clips from our hammerheads in Guinea-Bissau, thinking they were all scalloped hammerheads based on the morphology, but they're all
Right.
juveniles. And I think half of them, even ones that I had in my hand, I was convinced they were scalloped hammerheads. They came back as great hammerheads.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I was quite happy.
Yeah.
But it also of course makes it it makes it more complicated because we're also looking at the fisheries and we see it's one of the most fished sharks, and now it happens to be split over two species.
Hmm.
Um, so that's
Was
also
there a
interesting.
one that was more than others? Like one of the hammerheads like scallop over great?
I
Have you
think
checked that?
scallop is still more common.
Right.
So in that sense, I was right most of the time, I think, in my identification. But it was a bit of a shock to my ego when we
Yeah.
got the results back because one of the sharks I actually had in my hands, and we were like doubting if we should put a transmitter on. It was just a bit too small, but I was convinced it was a scalloped hammerhead, and it turns out to be a great hammerhead. So, and all the like, I've seen a lot of great hammerheads before, so I always thought like I can differentiate between the
Right.
species quite well, but
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just never know, right? It'll always
What
test you.
What's been the
yeah,
most
exactly.
interesting shark array in the Guinea-Bissau and the Mauritania? What's the most interesting one you've come across so far?
Ooh, oh, that's a good question. Um, I think there's two. Like I really like juvenile bull sharks, and
Hmm.
we find them in like really shallow waters. There's this story that we walked onto these intertidal mudflats during low tide because of other work. We wanted to sample the food web, so we had to go onto these mudflats for to collect worms and bivalves and stuff. But just before we did that, we deployed one of our fishing nets just off that sand flat in like knee deep water, expecting the tide goes up and then we start catching something. And we were on that mud flat for maybe 20 minutes or so. And I walked back to the boat, but the boat was further out, was too shallow for the boat to come and pick us up. So we were walking through that water, and I see something in the net, and yeah, it was a bull shark, and it was just there in what 40 centimeters of water, maybe 50 centimeters of water,
Right.
juvenile bull sharks, and it was yeah, that was my first realization. Like these animals really use those intertidal areas, and they also really go into these shallow waters.
Hmm.
Um, and I think also my colleagues had to get used to that idea because they didn't work on sharks. They
Hmm.
didn't expect juveniles bull sharks there when they jump off the boat
Yeah.
into the water. So yeah,
And when you say it's juvenile, like what size are we talking about? Juvenile?
a meter,
Oh, meter. Okay.
something. Yeah,
Okay.
so small. Yeah,
Small, small. Okay. Okay. Like it
yeah.
wasn't like a meter and a half, 2 meter
No, they were
juvenile.
like I think we caught three on that spot, and they were like within a centimeter from each other.
Okay.
So like 100 centimeters, 102, 103, something like that.
Hmm.
We also see the big ones. So now in our most recent expedition, we had one that was 2.5 meters.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I really like bull sharks just because of the connectivity with freshwater systems, and
Hmm.
um, they're very common in Guinea-Bissau also. And we see them breach. There's one
Hmm.
Oh,
specific spot where we see them jump, like 2.5 meter bull shark clear out of the
wow.
water.
Yeah,
And it's one specific channel.
I don't think I've ever heard that for bull sharks, other species, but I
Yeah,
don't think I've heard for bull sharks. That would be pretty cool to catch on film sometime.
yeah,
Get those jumping, get those literally jumping and stuff. So you have
yeah, exactly.
so you're still like how you're still in the middle of this project here, obviously.
Yeah,
You go say twice a year. You go there to
we try to. Yeah, we try to. Of course, during my PhD, we had COVID also, so
yeah
I
Yeah,
couldn't go
that's
for
hard.
quite a while. But
yeah
now for this project, it runs another 2 years. We I try to go for two expeditions a year. Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And so what is it with your plans as far as like going forward on that project?
Yeah.
Would you have any uh, goals or any new goals you're hoping to achieve in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I think the biggest, how do you say, the pillar of that project or the biggest deliverable I would like to have is really we're setting up this database on small scale fisheries and specifically their shark and ray catches. So I'm designing this whole database. There is this survey tool that they collect the data with, and then the idea is that that data is automatically analyzed and feed back to the National Fisheries Institute, so that all the shark and ray data is species specific and readily available also.
Yeah. You working with the obviously you're working with the community there.
Yeah. So, and the big part is that we also train master students. There's two master students on the project now that are doing a master's in Portugal.
Okay.
And the idea is that they will be trained using this database and actually also taking the lead in that when the project is done.
Okay. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I got to ask in that part of what's the primary language in that part of Africa? Is it French?
Portuguese.
Oh, it's
So
Portuguese.
yeah.
Okay.
So actually, in the region, it's quite common that countries like that. French is the main language, but
Hmm.
Guinea-Bissau is Portuguese,
Yeah.
and then they also speak Creole, so a more local language. And then on the islands where we work, they also speak Bijogo, which is completely different to
Hmm.
the other two languages. Um, and I don't speak any of them. I understand Portuguese. I don't speak it.
Right.
So, and I see that that's a good way for me also to really work with um, local students and
Hmm.
really making them part of our expeditions and also making sure that when the project stops or when I'm maybe not working there anymore, that they can take over.
Right. Right. But yeah, especially you got this long term database going. It'd be good to have people, especially local people, to buy in on the whole project and stuff. But where do you see you got all this stuff going on now, Guido? Where do you kind of see your career going from here?
Oh, well, I'm in the postdoc now, so I hope to well finish those projects first, but
Hmm.
at some point, yeah, I have quite a clear path that I would like to go to. I think my fascination is really in the how do you say that the ecological role of sharks in these large intertidal areas, but also on
Hmm.
coral reefs. Um, Maybe also more like looking at a comparison and the influences of fisheries on their ecological roles. Um, but that's really something that, like now, the coming years, I want to really think out my own research line and
Hmm.
work towards that. Um, but yeah, hopefully, I like working at the university and the research institute that I'm at. So
Hmm.
hopefully, I can stay
Hopefully, you can
there.
stay on there.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you what kind of advice would you have for like a young person just starting out? Even though you are young, you're just a kid to me. But if someone say younger is like maybe starting college and stuff, wants to pursue a career, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I get quite some students now, and that makes me feel old also. But quite some students asking me like, "Hey, can I do a project with you?" And I would say like, especially for like students in the Netherlands, also it's as I said, it's not a country that's known for its sharks. If you really want to pursue something like that, be prepared to yeah work your ass off. You have to really like find the projects um, and travel a lot, but also try to be part of those projects from an early stage and
Early state, yeah,
yeah and get a lot of field experience
hmm, yeah,
and see if you can publish with your supervisors at an early stage in your career because that's really where you learn all the parts of what it's like to do research.
hmm,
and don't like what I often get from students is that they want to do field work, and
Mm.
I understand that because that's often the nicest part. But if you collect a lot of data in the field, but you can't make sense of it afterwards on the computer, then um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's not going to work.
You gotta get
That's
stuff
true.
published. You gotta get stuff published. That's
Yeah,
great. That's great. That's great, Guido. I really want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your experiences and everything. And we'll definitely have to do a. Sometime I got to go with you on an expedition to see if we can find this false shark ray sometime.
oh,
That's
exactly,
it's like,
exactly. I think you will love it in
oh,
that region also. Yeah, it's
yep,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Might be
definitely.
another Lost Shark Guy episode, Lost Shark episode. So
Lost shark
Yeah.
guy. Yep,
you never
yep.
know.
Check out. Yep, absolutely. So anyway, thank you very much, Guido, for joining us today, and best of luck on your projects there.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Look forward to having you back on.
Thanks.
Thank you, Guido, for joining us here on the Beyond Jaws podcast. Dave, I love the fact that we have a researcher on that's talking about, that's doing research on a number of different species. I think it's a real asset, not only for his career, but also just for sharks in general, to have somebody who's looking at questions that go across different species. How important is that to shark science?
Oh, it is. He's covering a lot of different taxa, and he also in addition to working all these different aspects that he's covering, he's also working in a part of the world there's almost nothing known about, in in that sort of West African area, Guinea-Bissau and Mauritania. I mean, these are, as he explained, these are not easy areas to work in,
Right.
and I mean, you go in there, it's you're out in the field there where. I know he's told me in the past, like, they got to find certain areas to try to even get like an internet connection or anything if they're out there. Of course, when I used to do field work, we didn't have internet, so you just learned to suck it up, in my opinion. But he's going to those places that most people could not get into, and he's looking for species that there's almost nothing known about them, and yet these are some of the most critically endangered species in the world. Some of these, especially some of the guitar fish and wedge fish that he's found out there. His search for the Mauritanian wedge fish. We talked a little bit about, which is definitely a priority for me to like to join him in one of his expeditions sometime and see if we can go find this thing. That'd be amazing. I mean, that's a species that hasn't been seen in decades.
Yeah.
We kind of worried about that one. But no, he's got a fascinating story. Is coming from the Netherlands. He just did his schooling there, found people that he could work on, that he could work with, and he's super busy. He goes out, he does these eco tours out to the Azores.
Yeah,
people for diving with sharks. He goes to Africa. He's teaching. He's lecturing. He's starting to mentor students. I mean, he's kind of doing it all right now. And of course, he's at that early stage of his career where you're pretty young and enthusiastic, and it's why not?
Just trying to figure things out, right?
Yeah.
Also, what he loves the best. Yeah.
Yep. And no, it's a fascinating story. I was really glad we had him on. We'll definitely gonna have him back on later on, and
talk about some of his projects.
Talk about some more in depth and a few of his projects. But yeah, and it was really good. And I might tell the audience too, it took us like close to a year to actually get him on because he finished his PhD last year, and I wanted to have him on right then, but he was just so busy and on the go.
Yeah.
That it was just taking us, like I said, probably about 9-10 months to like finally find a time we could all meet up. So
there was probably at least a good last month and a half. We're just trying to be like, when are you available? I'm in the field for 7 weeks. Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah. We're jealous, but that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, David. It's a bit of a tangent, but it kind of goes off like, Guido looks for critically endangered species and new species. Obviously, it's something that you have in common with him. You've made a career out of it. Mm-hmm. It seems a lot in the news lately that biodiversity is under attack. Species at risk, or newly discovered species, or species who have gone extinct or have thought to have gone extinct, as many of the ones that you've seen. Why is it so important that we focus in on these species, not only from like a science and discovery point, but also from a protection standpoint? And I'm being a little selfish here, Dave, because in Ontario, they've just gutted a species at risk, an endangered species act in Ontario. And, a lot of people aren't really sticking up for it because there's like, well, we need to develop and this and that, and they're destroying habitat and they're destroying this and that. Why is it so hard to sell biodiversity on people, and why is it so important for biodiversity to be protected?
To me, it's kind of it's not just selling it. I think a lot of times it's the people selling it that don't do a very good job on it, because this falls back to a lot of the NGOs and foundations that claim to support biodiversity. And again, you and I have been friends for a while, so you kind of a little of my history. It's not easy to get funding to actually do biodiversity. Everybody talks about it, but when they come down to it, they're always back onto white sharks or tiger sharks or some high profile species. But trying to get funding to do like what I do, or like what Guido's doing, and there's some others out there that are doing it, but it's really difficult. So when you talk about how like some of the local provincial governments or state governments, let alone at a higher federal level, don't get behind it, it's the grassroots level. It's really not well done. Like I said, you get a lot of lip service. I mean, the only couple of groups, and I'll just mention because they've been supporters of mine, is the Save Our Seas Foundation, and more recently the Ocean Census. I mean, they've been really like Ocean Census focuses on describing new species. Save Our Seas Foundation, I think I've described at least a dozen new species thanks to their support. So so you have a couple groups, but in the bigger picture, you just don't see a lot of you get more lip service, I guess. And so it's kind of it fails at a lot of levels, Andrew, I guess what I'm saying.
Well, and I think also what happens too is because we don't make a big deal about these species and we don't profile these species enough in terms of from a communication standpoint, I feel that when it does come time for politicians to gut an act or to take away policy or to destroy that policy, it's an easy sell for them to do it because people are like, well, okay, so these species are going extinct anyway. Why would I need to be important? What they don't realize is the habitat that gets protected because of the protection of these species can be extremely important to whether it's on land or in water to your local environment. You have no idea how important it is to them.
Yeah, it's like it's like the song Another Brick in the Wall. It's like you really don't know. And I hope I'm not aging myself. I'm talking.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, Pink Floyd. So for young people don't know. But that's really what it is. It's like, I always also refer to it like, it's like you've got all these different bricks there, and like you start taking them away. At what point do you wait till the wall falls down and say, hey, we got a problem here? And, oftentimes when I speak publicly, I talk about by the time it gets up to a level where you notice that there's a problem with like white sharks or tiger sharks, these top predators, you've got a whole suite of species that have probably been impacted.
Yeah.
And
for sure,
and you
just haven't realized it yet,
right? And I give it just a touch, if a little bit of a plug for the YouTube series that Andrew and I are working on my YouTube channel at Lost Shark Guy. But this whole thing about searching for lost sharks, I kind of outline a lot of the reasons in the series why it's important to know about what you're losing, and so so it's like it's impacting a lot of what's going on. You heard, I think one of our earlier episodes with Chris Fallows talked about that he thinks more with that's affecting the white sharks. A lot of the other lower level trophic level shark species have disappeared.
Yeah.
And so,
for sure.
So I think there's something to that. And I think that it comes back to, especially if you're a young person starting out, go work on something like what Guido's doing, or some of the stuff I've done and others that they're not the high profile charismatic ones, but that's really, it's going to have a more broader impact, I think, from a conservation and from a biodiversity standpoint.
Agreed. This is the beauty of doing these types of podcasts. We were talking about, Guido got on a little bit of a tangent because of this question that I had, and we get into a conversation. That's what these podcasts spark. And so it'd be nice to see more biodiversity podcasts come out and start talking about this kind of stuff, because we need to really put a high profile on these species. So I think it's really important. Dave, this was awesome. Guido, we want to thank you so much for not only talking about your journey, but sparking this wonderful conversation that we'll probably clip and put out elsewhere, but we're definitely going to bring it back to Guido. We'll obviously have him back to talk about some of his projects on the species, to highlight those species before people start to say, hey, let's just destroy this habitat and forget about these species that are unknown to a lot of the people. But Dave, I want to thank you so much. And Guido, thank you so much for joining us. Dave, if people want to get a hold of you, you mentioned the Lost Shark Guy YouTube channel. So they can just search Lost Shark Guy. And if they want to go to get connected with you, I believe it's Instagram, right? Yeah, Instagram. Instagram's best one is also Lost Shark Guy. So Instagram and YouTube. And go subscribe and follow, and keep up on the latest shark discoveries. Absolutely. And we'll put in Guido's social media links if when he gives them to us. And so we have those. And I want to thank you so much, guys, for listening to this episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. From Dave and I, we want to thank you very much. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.